to call this meeting to order. Ms. LeBou, would you like to lead us in the pledge? Our first agenda item is item 2.1, presentation of the 19th edition of the Black Pages of Chamber of Greater Lafayette. Mr. Carlos Horman.
Good evening, President Morrison and members of the Lafayette Parish School Board. My name is Carlos Harvin, and I serve as Chief of Minority Affairs in the Office of Mayor President Josh Guillory. I'm honored to be here tonight, and I thank Mary Morrison for reaching out to me. As Black History Month comes to a close, it is encouraging to see that together we are making progress when it comes to moving the needle of African American achievement here in Lafayette Parish. 2 weeks ago tonight, I was honored to have read a Black History Month proclamation issued by our Mayor President. It listed significant first-time achievements by African Americans serving in key leadership roles in Lafayette. From our first Black fire chief to our first Black city marshal, from our first Black chief of police to our first African American woman to be elected as judge in the 15th Judicial District Court. Along with these trailblazers and others who were mentioned, the mayor's proclamation mentioned the first Black female president of the Lafayette Parish school system. I would like to publicly congratulate Ms. Mary Morrison and each one of you for making history here in Lafayette Parish. I'm here tonight because Ms. Morrison contacted me and mentioned and asked for a copy of the Black Pages of Greater Lafayette. Now in its 19th printing and its 40 years of existence, this directory of Black-owned businesses is a must-have tool for continuing the work of closing the gap of economic disparities that because of race still exist here in Lafayette today. Ever since 1980, the Lafayette Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, Lafayette Consolidated Government, both have teamed up to produce this booklet. Between its covers, you will find carpenters and painters, caterers and credit unions. There are lawn care professionals, electricians, event planners, and beauty supply stores. The businesses in these Black Pages, just like anywhere else, were started by dreamers and entrepreneurs who rolled up their sleeves and got busy building their dreams. They have been working hard, pre-pandemic and now during the COVID crisis, to make their dreams come true. I know that Ms. Morrison would like to see this book in all of our hands so that as one parish, we can each do our part to make sure that all of our business owners succeed, prosper, and move forward. On behalf of the Lafayette Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, Mayor President Josh Guillory, and Lafayette Consolidated Government, I would like to present you with your own copy of this 19th edition of the Black Pages of Greater Lafayette. And I thank you for giving me time on your agenda tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Harmon. Mr. Elroy, would you like to say a couple of words?
Bishop, when you get back to the podium, I'd like to ask you a few questions. In one of our conversations, we spoke about this book and what it contains. We have been trying to find a way, we as school board members and staff and administration, trying to find a way to share the wealth. And the problem is that we don't know where to distribute the wealth. That's the biggest problem of it. We're not shying away of giving these entrepreneurs, businesses, and some of the tax dollars that they put back in the system. We don't know who they are. I would encourage whatever you use to communicate with these entrepreneurs to communicate with us. Anytime something is advertised in the paper, if they feel they can do the job, whether they have all the credentials or not, go for it. The only way we know if you can do it, if you try to do it, and you can get your foot in the door. So what I would encourage you and whoever helped you put this together, to contact administration to share in some of these proceeds that we are so blessed to have. So the only way we can distribute this if we knew who you are. Thank you.
And Mr. Broussard, I wish I could take credit. I have to, in her absence, give the lion's share of the credit to Ms. Veronica Williams, clerk of the council. She would be here tonight, but she's at a city council meeting tonight. She and her sorors in Delta Sigma Theta for the last 40 years, they've been working, her sorority and LCG, on putting this booklet together. It is now going online as we speak, so we can correct and update a lot of the businesses in real time. And just as a note, from 2018 to 2020, we saw almost a 100% increase of the number of black-owned businesses listed in this directory, from 350 to 650 in a 2-year period. So the future looks bright. Our job at LCG is to support these entrepreneurs, these businesses, and just what you said, and I know in the spirit of why Ms. Morrison gave me this opportunity tonight, is that if we don't know, we don't know where to go. But there's names and faces and there's stories behind each and every business that is listed in this directory of owners in Lafayette and in the greater Lafayette area. So we'd be glad to continue updating and partnering to make sure that they're known.
So pass the information on that after Sunday, the 28th of February, by the calendar, Black History Month is over.
Yes.
Black history is not over, just the month of February. So encourage Ms. Veronica to reach out to the people that reached out to her to reach out to us.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Mr. Harmon, for coming by. And I just wanted to say the way I found out about it is because of an organization I'm involved with posted something that y'all were giving them out, and I had no idea. So, and in lieu of what Mr. Broussard is saying, so I'm happy to know that this exists and that we could utilize it, and everyone here, so that we'll know, the businesses, and we want to actually, spend money, spread the wealth, so to speak,
Absolutely.
to everyone. So thanks again for stopping by. We have Mr. Guidry. I'd like you to give Mr. Guidry a copy, as
Yes.
well as Mr. Bordelon and Ms. Trotter. next one. But again, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate your time.
I have a few extras I brought with me, so if anybody else would like to pick them up here from the school board, could I leave these with you?
And maybe Ms. Troxclair.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna move over to the agenda. Item 3.1, finance discussion and/or action concerning the review of budget recap and timeline. Oh, sorry. 2.2, second information item. Preliminary small capital project selection process for architects and engineers.
So, this information is being provided in response to Ms. Salachile's request during our February 10th presentation by Crochet Pruitt Associates. It's the preliminary work that was done in terms of the narrative regarding our small capital projects. It also includes the original draft of the RFQ for small capital projects and the statement of qualifications, which is, in essence, is the response template that goes hand in hand with the RFQ. At the March 3rd meeting, what we're planning on doing is presenting this information with minor modifications, and we'll identify those modifications by a different color print. So it'll be easier for the board members to review what has been changed. I make mention in the information item that one of the changes is going to be the evaluation process that has been requested. The second change that will be incorporated is an electronic random selection electronic process as opposed to the one that we were doing before. And it's possible, should the board decide to move in that direction come March meeting, that one or two things can happen. The board would come with their recommended changes, and we can finalize and move forward at that point in time. Or the board might consider a special board meeting, workshop, where we go through the RFQ, the criteria that are presented, and discuss each one, where our board members can indicate which ones they're in favor of leaving in the rubric, which ones they would like to see replaced, to allow that participation of the board before we finalize. So that's sort of what we were looking at. I just wanted to give a little information in terms of why we were presenting it. It was a request of a board member, and the direction we're heading in for the March 3rd meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Guidry. Anyone have any questions? Ms. LeBoux?
I have one question. I know in the RFQ it mentions assign a percentage to this particular project. Are they gonna have to fill out the RFP on top of the RFQ when they're doing that? Because the RFQ is asking a percentage to assign to a particular project, but I thought the RFQ was just qualifications. It wasn't a particular project in mind that they had to give a percentage for. And I'll show you, it's question number, on the criteria selection. Question number 4 under the qualifications, firm percentage of responsibility for the total work for this project.
So,
And that's in the RFQ. Is that gonna coincide with a specific project, or is the RFQ gonna be an overall just qualification document?
it's going to be an overall qualifications document with regards to small capital projects, as opposed to the larger capital projects such as wing additions, for building new schools, those go through a specific RFP process specific to that project.
Right.
And the criteria has a stronger focus on the specific nature of the project. For small capital projects, because they're so diverse, we're trying to get a feel for how diverse the experience of the firm is. And with regards to the percentage of the project that they're responsible for, you know, one of the considerations, and that may be something the board wants to change, but one of the considerations has been, or situations, you may have a one-person shop, and they joint venture with a national or international firm to do the work. So with regards to that, the criteria is looking at what percentage of the work that's being done by the individual or the local firm who's presenting the response. Because ultimately, if it's a very small percentage and the firm that they're joint venturing with, which may not even be in this state, it is doing the lion's share of it, that is something that the board may be interested in knowing.
Okay, so we just need to clarify that question so
Yes.
that it doesn't refer to this project. It's more of what total percentage of individuals in your office, in our region, will be working on this project or something like that. Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from any board members? Dr. Aguilar?
Thank you. Mr. Guidry, the agenda item has position statements attached from ACEC and AIA. Were you able to review those letters that were submitted, I assume to you or the board? And were you able to evaluate whether there's any merit to any suggestions that they raised in regards to the scoring in the RFQ?
The RFQ that's attached as an information item is the original RFQ. We will make some modifications to the RFQ rubric that we'll be presenting at the March 3rd meeting to incorporate some of the comments that were made in those position letters. And as I mentioned, we'll make it very clear as to what's changed from the original to the one that we'll be reviewing in March, on March 3rd, so the board members can very easily see what those proposed changes are.
Thank you. And one more question. Mr. Guidry, did you suggest that perhaps it might be advantageous for the board to maybe schedule a workshop to review the RFQ before we get to the March 6th decision point where we're asked to vote on a document? And if not, when would we be able to see the modified document ahead of the March 6th board meeting?
Well, we can, of course, for the March 3rd meeting, it's going to be the modifications that are mentioned in the information item, along with a few others that incorporates the comments from the two associations. At that point, I'm thinking that the board could, the motion could be to schedule a workshop to discuss the rubric or whatever items of the RFQ. Because between now and then, it's going to be sort of difficult to accomplish that.
Okay. Do you plan to resubmit the modified RFQ back to the associations for review ahead of the March 6th meeting?
No.
I think that might be helpful. If you're going to tweak the document, then it might be helpful to circle back and see if that takes care of any concerns they may have, or maybe raises additional flags that we haven't even considered.
I think the timing of it is going to make that very difficult to do from the standpoint that those two associations would have to reach out to their membership that participated in the first round, get their comments, perhaps put it in writing. I don't see that being able to happen, prior to next week. I just don't think there's enough time for that to occur. Again, if the board chooses to go with the workshop, then perhaps part of that motion could be to present the document that the board's looking at on March 3rd, get comments back, and we can have that ready in time for the workshop.
Thank you.
Ms. LeBoux?
I apologize. I asked you this question, Billy, last meeting, and I didn't even let you answer. Who drafted these documents?
The RFQ document, well, the narrative was a collaborative effort between Mr. Bordelon and myself.
Okay.
Just trying to document what we had been doing in previous years, because that was one of the concerns that had been expressed previously. The RFQ document itself is pretty much the RFQ document that we've been using over the past 5 years or so, and so we use that as our starting point, because we figured the criteria that were in it had been vetted mostly by the previous board and about a year's worth of the current board, and so that's why it was the starting point, and nothing more than that. I mean, that was the reason for us beginning with that particular document.
Okay, so our attorney has not looked at the document.
I'd have to think back. We typically, with regards to the RFQ document, our attorney has reviewed most, if not all, of our RFP documents for the larger projects. And the RFQ document is, although not the same, very, very similar. It's probably toned down a bit because the nature of the projects are not as big and may not require the same level. The level of complexity is different. So, although they may not have reviewed that specific document, their reviews of the RFP indirectly would lend itself to what was included in that document. But with that said, we can add that and ask them specifically review that document with
Okay.
the modifications prior to the workshop that the board may wish to schedule. Be more than happy to do that.
Okay. And one final question. If we decided to allow our planning and facilities department to select small projects between 0 and 50,000, I think right now you did 0 to 25, but is 50,000 the magic number at which we must do a more significant bid process for the small projects, or did y'all arbitrarily pick that delineation?
Well, for it to be a capital project, it has to be 25,000. So
Okay.
that's a minimal. So small capital project, and it's an administrative decision that we're presenting. And if the board wants to change that dollar threshold, then we'll make that change.
Okay.
But so the small capital projects, as presented in the narrative, takes the low end of the threshold, 25,000, and goes up to 50. So it's about a $50,000 project, which would lend itself mainly to walkways, coverings, things of that nature. It doesn't take much to get to 50,000, so it
Right.
would really limit the scope. But we're open to that dollar.
So the redefinition of small capital?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Santani?
Mr. Guidry, in particular on one of the position statements, I think it's the AIA, they mentioned having to complete 5 direct appointment projects under $50,000 prior to submitting for anything more. Were you persuaded by that statement? Did you take it into consideration and think that, come to the conclusion that you had it where you felt like it was a good spot? Was there any kind of change to our process given that comment?
I wouldn't have any problems changing it to 3. But with 5, it just gives, that much more of a comfort level. But if 3 is a level that's comfortable to the board, Mr. Bordlaw, are you comfortable with reducing it to 3?
Yeah,
And-
I think 5, 5 isn't necessarily a bad number, I think, in the context of the overall workload. That was the way I read their comment of, if it takes them 7 years to get their 5,
I understand.
that I think that's what it is. So that's kind of what I wanted to
Okay.
understand that. Thank you.
No further questions, we'll move right along. It brings us to item 3.1, discussion and or action concerning the review of the budget recap and timeline. And the recommended action is that the board provides recommendations to administration with regards to adjustments to be made to the proposed 2021-2022 budget recap and timeline and arriving at the final draft.
Okay, so, the, recap as presented, we're at the February 23rd special board meeting, number 1, where we take care of all funds other than the general fund and our group health fund. And then we begin the process of reviewing, the general fund and the group insurance fund over the next 2 meetings, and then come back with all of the budgets one final time and ask the board to allow us to move forward with the formal budget adoption process, which would end with a public meeting and budget adoption on May 19th, unless there's a change to the calendar. So no changes up to this point. And I'd ask if there are any questions or comments with regards to the date.
Any questions, board members? Okay, seeing no questions, we'll move on to item 3.2, discussion and or action concerning the proposed budget for 2021-2022 special revenue fund. And the recommended action is that the board provides recommendations to administration with regards to adjustments to be made to the proposed 2021-2022 budget recap and timeline.
So the special revenue funds as presented, again, for the line items to be included, it means that we've either received an award letter from the grantor agency and we have the specific amount, or we have some strong indication in writing of what that allocation will be. That's what is reflected in the special revenue proposed budget at this point in time. As we receive award letters, for example, there's a second round of stimulus funds. You don't see them here because we have not officially received the documentation that goes along with it. We prefer to include it in the budget once we have official verification from the grantor agency. So I just wanted to make that point as to which grants get included on the original proposed budget.
Any questions, board member? Mrs. Blue?
The school redesign planning grant, is that for a particular school? Is that in general? Is that something that will feed into facilities and planning? It's on, close to the bottom of that, initial federal through state grants.
Is it for,
275,000.
you know, if it's for a specific school?
Is it for a specific school or is it just in general we can be, is that in addition to our?
So, Mr. Boo, the redesign grant, and Mr. Guidry, correct me if I'm wrong, but the redesign grant, or for those CIR schools, transformation schools, it's a grant, Ms. Hippolyte's nodding yes, that we wrote a few years ago to support the work in our CIR schools.
Thank you.
Mrs. Centeni?
Mr. Guidry, if we were to be looking at the 2021 actuals, fiscal year 21 actuals, is the special revenue fund where we would see the CARES Act, the first round of CARES Act money?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And the expenditures as well, or are those gonna be transfers into other cost centers?
You would see the expenditures as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, any other board member comment? Okay, so we'll move to item 3.3, discussion and or action concerning the proposed budget for 2021-2022 capital projects, capital improvement fund.
So, the capital improvement fund represents, combination of any carryover projects that were budgeted in a prior year, that have not yet been completed or not expected to be completed by June 30 of 21, as well as any requests, that we would have received from, either our maintenance department, and just as importantly, our schools. Typically, we have two main capital funds that are funded by sales tax. The capital improvement funds generally fund equipment replacement, buses, vehicles, things of that nature. The self-insurance fund, the self-funded construction fund, which we'll be going over later, basically focuses on renovations, additions, and new schools. So that's sort of the difference between the two funds. And as I mentioned, the capital improvement fund is mostly equipment, vehicles, items of that nature. I'd ask if there are any questions with regards to what's included in the proposed capital improvement fund.
Board members, any questions for item 3.3? Mr. Broussard?
So, Mr. Guidry, all of these are, or Mr. Bordelon, all of these are present projects on the books that are being looked at or worked on or completed by 2021 in this budget? Either one.
So if you look at page 1 of 4, Mr. Broussard, you'll see under current expenditures, right after fund balance, about a quarter of the way down.
Mhm.
Here's where the requests for next school year are reflected, and that takes us all the way to page 2 until you get to about 3/4 of the way down. The caption "Carry Forward Project Expenditures." Those are the projects that are coming forward from a previous school year, be it the current one, 21,
Mhm.
and we list which year it's coming from. If you notice it, in
Right.
between the project description and the dollar amount, that's the year it's being carried forward from. One other item I'd like to mention on the very last page 4, there are certain requests that are made by the schools, and perhaps even by our maintenance department, which do not meet the definition or the $25,000 threshold that's required to be considered a capital project. So for those, we give consideration, and for those that we propose, what ends up happening is the capital fund transfers those funds to the general fund since they don't qualify for capital, because to charge it against the building maintenance project that are in the general fund, we wouldn't get to do a fraction of these. They would just decimate the existing building maintenance fund that we're going to propose in the general fund. So this is an opportunity to consider some of the larger ticket items that don't meet unit price wise. They do not meet the capital definition dollar wise, but nonetheless they're significant enough and they're important enough to where we'd like to fund them, but not out of the building maintenance fund because it was pretty much, this would equate to about 50% of what we have set aside in building maintenance, and we wouldn't get to do the day-to-day stuff, to the level that we're doing it now. So I just wanted to make mention of that. It's not new. We've been doing this for 2 to 3 years now. And if you go down the list, it's typically items that in total cost more than $25,000, but the unit price is less than $25,000. So for example, if a lawnmower costs $15,000, doesn't meet the $25,000 threshold, but if we buy 5, total $75,000, it's a pretty significant number. So we make a transfer to the general fund and we make those purchases there.
Any questions, board members? Seeing none, we're gonna move on to item 3.4.
So the proposed self-funded construction fund, with regards to the revenues, one of the main funding sources for our capital project funds that aren't tied to bonds are sales tax collections. So typically, in the revenue section, you'll see 2.5 million. That's sort of the standard amount that we budget both in the self-funded construction fund and in the capital improvement fund that we just discussed. I'd like to point out that we also have the transfer in from the general fund that we've been accumulating and putting in pay-as-you-go until that point in time that we commit those funds to being utilized as debt service. This 4.5 million that's currently reflected is the amount that comes forward from fiscal year 21. When we get to the general fund, which is where these funds are being transferred from, we're going to make an effort to increase that number, and assuming we're able to do so, next time we come with and present this particular budget, then that 4.5 million would be adjusted at that point in time. So I just wanted to make mention of that. A couple of other things, and it pretty much works the same way. The projects that were requested by the school and our maintenance department are listed. If you were to go to the third page, I'd like to just call your attention to the fact that we set up a separate cost center for the construction of Prairie, Carrinclo Heights, and Lafayette High. If you recall, we set up reserves specifically for those 3 schools. So the construction of these 3 schools. What this does is it puts the reserve in a separate cost center, and at any point in time that we expend any of those funds, only those funds will be reflected in this cost center. You'll notice there is a general and administrative line item within this cost center of $146,571. The detail supporting that amount is Schedule 1. It is basically the new projects director that will be hired in the near future, as well as costs to get his or her office up and running. So I just wanted to make note of that. That's a change from the way we've been presenting it in the past. And one other thing I'd like to call to your attention in terms of change is we've made an effort to increase our commitment for roofing projects. In the next 3 to 4 years, we anticipate about $16 million of roofing replacements. If we wait until then, it would not allow, there will not be any funds available to do any other projects. So, as you may recall, when our sales tax collections exceed budget on a monthly basis, the actual collections, we send 75% to the capital fund. And so that has allowed us to to increase the roofing projects reserve. In addition, we've also created a new reserve for replacement of intercom systems. We have a list of several intercom systems that have pretty much served their time. We don't want to replace them until they're no longer usable, so we don't want to prematurely replace them. But by the same token, when they go out, the funds need to be there so that we can get those projects done. So we've increased the roofing projects reserve slightly, and we've set up a new reserve for intercom systems. So just wanted to make mention of that. Any questions regarding those slight changes that we've made?
Any questions, board members? Ms. LeBouf?
Always, I'm sorry. One question about the Como High Agri-Science Carpenter Shop. I know there's been need to increase the size of the welding shop, and I thought we funded money for that because I think it had to be so many cubic feet per, station for welding. Is that what that funding is for, or is that for that separate greenhouse area?
John, do you know what this?
Yes, that is for the agri-science shop expansion that you're referring to.
So the first one, the welding shop, or we're talking about the, I know they have a greenhouse, area as well.
It was for the agri-science carpentry shop.
Okay, so we'll encompass the area where the welding takes place.
Welding and carpentry.
Okay.
Yes.
And my second question is the intent drawings and specification for standard classroom wing. Are we, from the wings that we've constructed this year, do we not have a set of plans that we could use as a standardization for the schools, or is that what, are we looking at all those plans and improving them? Can you explain that to me, that charge?
Yeah, that we're gonna take the items that we incorporated in the wings and put it into a design document, so that as we move forward, we have a design document that we can hand off to an architect for the next wing project or the next new school project, and say these are the standards that we would like to use. Standards such as door hardware, doors, windows, ceilings, floors, things like that we want to keep as a standard, so that we're not always using new and innovative products. I mean, the standard products work for us, and we figured out which products hold up well and which ones don't. So we'd like to create that in one document so we can have that as a standard and hand it off every time we need it to an architect to use in the design of a new project.
Any other comments, board members? Okay, we're gonna move on to item 3.5, discussion and our action concerning the proposed budget for 2021, 2022, 2019A construction fund.
In this proposed budget, we're projecting the amount of funds that are going to be expended within the 21-22 school year. It doesn't necessarily mean that is the total cost of the project. So I think most board members are familiar with that. I just wanted to reiterate that. But nonetheless, these represent the estimates for each of these projects that have been previously approved by the board in terms of the expenditures that we are projecting for the 21-22 school year. This is a bond construction fund.
Dr. Aguilar?
Mr. Guidry, I saw earlier that we do have the money budgeted to air condition the cafeteria areas in quite a few schools.
Yes.
Exactly when is that work going to be started, and if not, can it be added to this list of projects for the upcoming school year? It seems to me we keep waiting for projects to be let out for bid so that construction can begin, so that we can clear up some of these items. So I'd appreciate your thoughts about the air conditioning of the cafeterias.
So-
Is it something that we can begin in the next 6 months?
So we have two phases listed in the self-funded construction project as budgeted line items. So funding has been set aside. They're actually carryover projects. So a consideration the board may wish to make is at its March 3rd meeting or during the board workshop, which may need to be a special board meeting, because workshops, the board can't take any action. You may wish to take action. So at that point in time, either March 3rd or special board meeting, if the board chooses to schedule that would be a good time for the board to provide administration with an indication that, well, these are small capital projects. We want them to follow the finalized projects that, once we're done. However, these specific projects we want to address immediately, either through direct assignment or through a specific RFP process. So that could be brought in at that point in time, if y'all would like.
Any other board member comment? Okay, we're gonna move to item 3.6, discussion and or action concerning the proposed budget 2021-2022 Southside High School Construction Fund.
So we're finishing up. The 10,000 reflects what we are projecting to spend in the 21-22 school year. Most of the funding is we're projecting to expend in the current year. One of the things that I'm asking for on the March 3rd meeting, if it ends up being an agenda item, is to request an extension, authorization for staff to request an extension of time to spend the USDA funding. Deadline's August 4th. Here's my reason for that. All of the furniture, fixtures, equipment, the calculators, the Chromebooks, the laptops, all of that will be taken care of probably within the next week or two. So there's no issue with the timing of those. With regards to that part of the funding that's going towards capital projects, the covered pavilion next to the cafeteria, that may take it. We'll be cutting it close. So I have some concerns about that. In addition, one of the things, one of the benefits to the extension would be this. So we know how much, in the next couple of weeks, we'll know exactly how much we spent on FF&E, furniture, fixture, and equipment. We'll have a better idea of what it's going to cost for that irrigation system, electrical upgrade. But when the dust settles, and there may be some funding available, it might be 10,000, it might be 100,000, because those projects may come in less than was projected. What I'd like to see happen, and we'll have more discussion, is you may recall there were other projects that were with regards to dugouts and things of that nature for athletics that were approved by the board. Well, if we have whatever that dollar amount is, let's just assume that we have some funding available, USDA funding available. Whatever that amount is, I would propose that it would allow us to expend it to the penny, just partially paid, put that towards those projects that are currently funded, I believe, in the 2019A construction. So it will allow us to expend it to the penny, and we'll be done with it. I've had some preliminary discussions with USDA. They've made no official statement. However, they did indicate that they were comfortable with me going to the board and requesting the authority to do so. So I'm hoping that's an indication that they will work with us, and we'll ask for a 6-month extension with the hopes that we only need 3 of those months. But at least we wouldn't have to go back and ask if there's something that comes up unexpectedly. So anyway, I wanted to mention that now, just so that we've made the progress on FF&E. The capital, we need a little bit more time, and we have a plan to where we can expend it to the penny, and be done with that particular, funding source.
Any board member comment? Okay, we'll move to item 3.7, discussion and or action concerning the proposed budget for a 2021-2022 debt service fund.
So the debt service fund basically just reflects our debt service for the coming 21-22 school year. So with that said, right now there are no new bond sales reflected in it, but all it takes to reflect a new bond sale is a budget revision, depending on the timing of it, or incorporating it into the next time we visit this particular budget before we go into the adoption process. So I just wanted to make mention, but this is the debt that's existing as of today. It's the debt service for the 21-22 school year.
Board members, any comment? Okay, we'll move on to item 3.8, discussion and or action concerning the proposed budget for a 2021-2022 combined sales tax.
So with regards to our sales tax collection, so you may recall the December report, we're about 5% ahead of last year's collections at this time of the year. So with regards to our budget assumptions, I share it so that if the board has a difference of opinion, then we would need to know about it so that we could move in that direction. This particular budget reflects 0% increase in collections over the current year, over 2021. So what that means is we've incorporated the 5% increase over last year's collections into these numbers. We've projected out the rest of the year for 2021, and that's the number, no growth, that's being reflected here. Our reasoning for doing that, last year we were about 11% ahead as of the end of December. Of course, COVID hit in March, and we finished the year at 2% behind. So I'm hoping that that's not the case, but we have no way of knowing, what lies ahead with regards to the economy, how quickly it's going to ramp up. Another thing is that another item to consider is that 5% includes the repairs that were done as a result of our hurricane season. We saw some pretty significant jumps in November as the repairs to homes in our area were being made, and so that is not something I would feel comfortable budgeting for more reasons than one. I'd hate to think that we would experience another hurricane season like we have. It was so out of the ordinary. But nonetheless, that's the budget assumption that's reflected in this proposed sales tax budget.
Any comments or questions, board members? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 3.9, discussion and or action concerning the proposed budget 2021-2022 school food service fund.
So with regards to the school food service budget, we're in the last year of the CEP program, and we're at that point of the cycle where we determine if schools can be added, you know, so on and so forth. That has been put on hold in terms of our being given direction as to which way this is going. Right now, all schools are eating free. So we know that that is going to have an impact on the school food service budget. We just don't know enough about it. So we went with the program that we have right now, all schools eat free, and we're experiencing, even with that, we don't have all the kids at the school. So the participation, even with the federal reimbursement, our revenue stream isn't what it had been in previous years. So there's a little uncertainty, a little unknown. As we move forward and we can fill in a few of the blanks that we can't currently fill in, we may need to come back with some adjustments in the next version of this particular budget that will be coming back to y'all in May. Hopefully by then we'll know more.
Any questions, board members? Okay, moving to item 3.10, discussion and/or action concerning the proposed budget for 2021-2022, 2002, 1.5 cent sales tax.
The budget assumptions are consistent with those of the combined sales tax, and that is zero growth over current year. So that is what's currently reflected in this proposed budget for the 2002 1.5 cent sales tax.
Mrs. Intani?
Mr. Guidry, I know we kind of got sidetracked by COVID, but I know the Blue Ribbon Committee had recommended in the recent past, and the board discussed it. I want to say it was the March meeting right before everything shut down, about getting on a schedule where we gave one-time stipends most years, and then tried to build up a reserve so that maybe every 3, 4, 5 years we were able to get a permanent raise into the salary schedule. Is there anything reflected here? I don't see anything reflected here, but perhaps I'm looking in the wrong place. Is there anything where we're trying to establish a reserve for permanent salary schedule increases?
So the very last line item before total expenditures, the description is excess reserve distribution to teachers. You'll notice the current budget for 2021 is $5.3 million. You'll notice that it's zero for 21-22, and this is consistent. This is the way we do it every year. What that allows for is when we meet and have that same discussion again that we have every year in terms of can we do both? You know, can we fund a salary increase and issue a 14th check? When that discussion comes up and the board makes a decision, then we'll put the applicable dollar amount in the budget. So it's still open for that to happen.
So that wasn't quite what I was asking. So this may just be kind of a philosophical question about how we construct the budget. I'm basically asking, might it be, you know, advisable is not really going to be the answer I'm looking for from you, but you know, I imagine because that excess reserve distribution is zero every year, and then we get to October every year, and then we have the same conversation every year of we want to give a raise, and then no, we give a bonus. So what I'm basically saying is, should we have a second item here that's zero, that is, you know, reserved for permanent salary schedule increases, and then as we get towards the end of the fiscal year, we can put a fifth of what we might normally have in the excess reserve distribution to teachers line item, and then leave 80% in that excess reserve line, where while we build up the reserve to pay for an ongoing permanent raise. That's basically what I'm asking. Would that be something that would be doable if the board so chose?
Could you repeat?
Did I make it too complicated?
No, I missed, if you could repeat the amount of the reserve you're looking for.
So I'm saying put a fifth. Every time we go to declare an excess distribution, we say, okay, a fifth of this is going to be recurring every year, and it's going to go.
That's
Yeah,
what I had-
no, I understand that it has to be recurring if we're going to give a permanent salary increase.
Right,
So,
right.
so that's basically what I'm saying is this let's just say for argument's sake that we're going to give, say it's $5.283 million again this year. I would say, okay, let's make $1 million of that every year go into this line item reserve for permanent teacher salary increases, and give the $4.283 million to our teachers as a stipend. And then next year, obviously the $1 million goes in, and then whatever the board is comfortable with, we can say, all right, we're gonna put that recurring into the teacher salary increases. And then hopefully 3-4 years from then, we're able to say, okay, we're at what is a meaningful salary increase using this reserve that we built up while also meeting the reserve requirements, since this is sales tax money, so.
Sure. Would you be okay, offering it up as a motion from the standpoint that
I'm
would-
not saying I want to do it tonight. I'm really just kind of bringing it up to see if it's feasible, if this is a way, because I think it honors the intent of the Blue Ribbon Committee. I think it honors the intent or what the teachers responded with, and that their poll back in March or February, if everybody remembers that poll that the LPAE put out. I mean, this is certainly something I would support, and I'm just trying to kind of almost talk out loud and see what's feasible and what could possibly.
It's definitely feasible. to answer
Okay.
your question.
Thank you. I'll consider that, and I'll certainly touch base with you before I
Sure.
try to do anything like
Thank
that.
you.
Any questions, board members? Any other questions? I believe that's our last item. You have a question, Ms. LeBeau?
I have one more question. The professional development, is any of that covered by the CARES Act money? But I'm sorry, go on.
We do have professional development covered in the CARES Act budget. This particular one-day professional development is the one that is school district-wide. The only PD professional development that we charge to this fund, or that's considered to be charged to this fund, is those that are school district-wide. They should be the benefit to all teachers. So that's the one that's reflected here, but we do have various types of professional development, might be by subject area, that's included in the CARES Act.
Mrs. Santani?
I have one question, if you'll humor me, about the self-funded construction fund. Is that okay? Okay. Mr. Guidry, as we approved the current fiscal year's budget in the middle of I believe the stay-at-home order at the time, we took an unusual action in that we had decided to put the $4.5 million that you mentioned earlier in the self-funded construction fund. We decided to transfer that out of the last fiscal year's surplus, correct? And then take a wait-and-see approach for this fiscal year's transfer to see if we would be in a position to still do it, and if not, we could come back and make appropriate changes. Are we feeling like that $4.5 million would be able to be transferred with no issue this year?
Well, the $4.5 million.
And certainly correct me if I have a couple of parts of that wrong.
Well, the $4.5 million that I'm referring to, Mr. Santani, is, if you would give me a minute just to get to that particular budget. It's actually recurring. In other words, we have it in this year's budget, and it's actually a transfer. Now, at the end of the year, if there's an excess, we put an amount over and above that into pay-as-you-go. So the 4.5 million that I'm referring to, it's the one that we started out with. I'm going back maybe six 6 or 800,000, and then we added.
No, right, but it was, no, so my question, it's a cash flow question, right? Because I know it was in the budget, and I know it's going to happen unless the board decides that it doesn't happen. But we did it out of surplus and then said, we're gonna wait, we're not gonna do the transfer on July 1st like we normally do. We were gonna wait to do it, so.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, so my question
Yeah.
is, have we done it yet? I mean, have you gotten to a point where you feel comfortable making the actual budgeted
Yes,
transfer?
we're planning on funding the 4.5 million for 2021.
Okay, thank you very much.
And so that's part
Ms.
of that,
LeBeau?
I'm sorry, that's part of that $35 million number that we have already allocated to the construction for Prairie, Karen Crow, and Lafayette? That's already included in that self-funded construction fund budget?
35, I'm showing 27 comes to mind.
It says 27, oh, you're right, 35 is the total of the entire
Yes,
column. I
yes.
apologize, it's on a separate page.
So, yes.
Okay, so the four and a half is already included in that 27 number, or it's gonna be on top of that 27?
It is included in that 27.
Thank you.
Oh, no problem. We're all done? Okay, with no further questions, I'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting.